Hey everyone, this is Todd McFarlane here. I just want to make an announcement. We're going to be doing on February 12th, on Monday, at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 5 p.m. on the East Coast. We're going to be doing a charity auction event, which basically means every single penny that we earn that day, 100% of it will be going to the charity that you in our polling will pick. The three charities. One is for the Animal Welfare, American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, the ASPCA, for all you animal lovers out there. The other one is for children, Children's International. There are people both here in this country and around the world, children that don't have enough food in their bellies, and it's a good cause to basically see if we can help feed them. And then one of the women's rights care, another one that helps women across the globe also stay healthy, give them medical and food so they can raise their families properly. We'll let you guys decide which one of those three you want to give 100% of the money to, and then we'll basically sell and do as much fun as we can do. Now, what's going to be in the auction? Oh, we're going to go to my warehouse. We're going to find lots and lots of stuff. You guys saw some of it in the past, like sweaters. Maybe we're throwing a jacket. I found a couple pieces of artwork I'm going to donate. I'll probably do a sketch or two that's in there. We've got tons of comic books. We've got tons of toys. We're going to do some sort of gathering of things put together. We're going to offer like a half an hour personal Zoom, me and you, whoever wins that one. We get to just chit-chat, have a good time. Another one that we'll do a Zoom that any of you aspiring artists or know somebody's an artist, I will basically do a half an hour review of your portfolio of the art and give you some tips that I can. And then we're just going to come up with a bunch of other stuff that's super crazy. The goal is to raise, hopefully, somewhere between $40,000 to $100,000 maybe for a good cause, and give every single penny that's raised away to one of these great places. I think it's the reason why I'm here more than anything else on Whatnot. We can, besides a great community with you good people there, is that we can get a lot of money and help the world do a lot of good things, and in our own backyard, whether that's in a particular state and or in our country. So anybody interested, come out February 12th, 2 p.m. on the Pacific Standard Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Get ready for it. There's going to be a link in the bio to any of the charities. So if you want to basically help us in the voting of that, you can basically do your homework and research. So hope to see you there. I'll probably buy a couple items myself so we can make that donation too. All right, peace. Be good.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. Time for Spawn Daily. We're up to issue number 37. But anyways, let's go ahead and dive into issue 37. I'll go ahead and share my screen with you guys so you can check out the art if you're watching on the YouTube channel. So really cool cover. We see some guy with a big grin on his face. He's got a sharp knife in his hand, and the knife we see Spawn reflected. And he's got a huge head of hair. So immediately the first thing that I thought of was the creature or the person or whatever you want to call him that pulled the Violator out of all that sewage that separated the Violator and Spawn when they were fighting in the sewers a couple of issues ago. We're not explicitly told that that's who this is, but it certainly seems to be this is who this is. Next thing I want to point out as we get inside, the Freak. So we do have a name for that character. His name is the Freak. This is an Alan Moore written issue. Todd McFarlane handles the plot, but Alan Moore doing the scripting. Greg Capullo on pencils, Todd McFarlane on inks. Tom Orzechowski handles the letters. Colors by Steve Oliff, Quinn Suppley with Oleoptics. A special thanks to Kevin Conrad, Julia Simmons, and Chance Wolfe. Now, I do want to mention that I like the fact it's broken down like this. Writer Alan Moore, plot Todd McFarlane, because as Rocky and I have talked about many, many times, those early issues where we had Alan Moore and Dave Sim and Neil Gaiman and Frank Miller, and Grant Morrison, right? It was all just story by, and then it was the name of these writers. And so we never knew, we were never sure just how much input McFarlane had, in the story that was being told. And we were very curious. We talked about how much he may have put in terms of wanting the story to go in the direction he wants to take Spawn ultimately. So I like that obviously he's got input here into what Moore is doing, and it's acknowledged so that we know. Because obviously, like I said, this freak character we saw a couple of issues ago rescue the Violators. So interesting that McFarlane chose Alan Moore to flesh out the story of the freak, who's an interesting character in a lot of ways, but also a little bit two-dimensional. But that's not out of the ordinary for what we see in the Spawn book. So we do see him speaking, and I'll point out, you can't see it in the screen share because I've redacted the dialogue because I don't want to get in trouble for copyright stuff by sharing the whole issue online. But if you have an actual copy, the digital copy of the book, physical copy of the book, you'll see that the lettering that Orzechowski uses, the freak's speech pattern, it's a very varied looking font, right? So the letters, they're not all the same size. It's not like you have capitals one size and lowercase letters the other size. Like, they vary between capital and lowercase, but they also vary. Even the capitals amongst themselves and lowercase amongst themselves vary in size, and it kind of shows, in my mind, that he has kind of a quavery voice. That idea of the freak, and certainly he looks crazy on the front cover. So he very much is an interesting figure, right? And the other thing that I love about this, and you credit Alan Moore for this, is his voice and the way he's speaking, his vocabulary. It's very flowery and descriptive in a way, like as we see on the first page there, as he's heading into the alley, and we see Spawn sleeping there in the background, and he describes the place where he is. The freak does, as these decayed estates are all there is of my despised inheritance. The dismal palace chandeliered with mad dog bottle glass and tiled with a mosaic of syringe and human filth. Like it's just that, like, very descriptive, like it's flowery in a way, and it's so interesting, like a lot of descriptors, and it paints a picture that this is a guy who, although crazy, there's an intelligence, behind him. So we do notice that he's being chased by some ne'er-do-wells. It's not exactly clear why. He does refer to himself, when we get almost a full page splash there, as the freak. And these guys are saying, hey, look at this freaky looking guy. Looks like Halloween came early. And the freak is, it's interesting, his reaction. He's like, trick or treat, I'm going to teach you a lesson. You shouldn't be approaching strangers after dark. Things are not always what they seem. And then just about as the guys are about to attack, Spawn wakes up, kind of scares them off. And he's wondering, obviously, who this person is, who this freak is. When these guys that are about to attack, these thugs or whoever they are, I mean, they do have an interesting look themselves. They all have sort of spiky hair and almost like chapel-like skulls on their face. It's kind of interesting. It's clearly some part of some gang, sort of depraved. They're all carrying knives. Not really explained who they are or why they were after the freak specifically, but I guess maybe it's incidental to the story, or maybe we'll find out more later on. But when one of them says, "What the hell?" Spawn's like, "Hell? You what do you know of hell? You know nothing of hell, but I'll teach you." And the guy's obviously scared, run off. So then Spawn makes the acquaintance of this freak, this very flowery, speaking individual. He talks about, oh, it's nice to meet a fellow knight, brothers within the putrid, decadent domain of fly-blown shadows. So again, Moore's really leaning into this sort of high vocabulary, definitely busted out his thesaurus for this one, or knowing Alan Moore probably didn't even need to. So Spawn's like, well, who are you? Why are you dressed like that? What's going on? Why are those guys after you? And the Freak is, again, we're not exactly sure. Even later when it's explained, kind of his origin, it's never really explained how he has come to believe what he believes. It's almost like he has a sixth sense. He's able to, in a lot of ways, play into Al Simmons, like play upon Al's sympathies in a lot of ways, because he talks about them being, very similar. He talks about having their lives taken away from them. And then he's like, does that ring any bells for you? What's your story and whatnot? And again, playing on Al's sympathies, and you give Al the benefit of the doubt, but based on what happens later, you do wonder why Al trusted him, just on his word. Because, let's face it, the guy does look like he's crazy. And Al's been burned before by trusting the wrong people. But again, I'll chalk it up to all the trauma he's gone through lately, and wanting to believe this guy because he sees in himself, in this guy, right? Like they've been through a lot of the same things. And when Al asks his story, we get a great double-page spread from Greg Capullo, and the guy talks about the fact that he was working in undercover operations for the government. Like, sound familiar, right? Just like Al Simmons, and his rather than exactly like Al Simmons, where Al Simmons was the one killed. In the case of the Freak, he claims that his wife and his son were killed in order to get back at something that the Freak had done in his capacity of an undercover agent. And then he discovered basically that it was somebody who was looking to seek vengeance for what the Freak had done to him. His name, we're told, was Dr. Delirium. And he, after killing the Freak's wife and son, they ambushed the Freak and experimented on him. And the goal of Dr. Delirium was to turn the Freak into like a servant, like a mindless automaton. Apparently, Delirium had a bunch of these, like, army of people that were subservient to him. But for whatever reason, the drugs and the shocks and everything else that Dr. Delirium did to the Freak instead enhanced his senses and his perceptions and his reactions for whatever reason. So when they let him loose, he was actually able to escape, and he was reborn, and now he's living amongst what he calls the city's splendid ruins and underside. So he says, I was reborn a Freak with no desire except to slake the madness raging in my soul upon the burning cognac of revenge. So again, we get some really flowery speech from Alan Moore. But again, you can see why, even though he probably shouldn't have trusted him, and you would think based on the fact he's been burned before that Al Simmons wouldn't trust the Freak, just so many similarities with what Spawn had gone through. I think he wanted to believe, and so he chose to. So the Freak's like, yeah, I think that you can help me. You can help me get my revenge. We must storm the fortress of Delirium. We've got to go underground. You can't attack them from the street level. And so Spawn agrees, and he follows the Freak, who has this like living space all set up in the sewers with grandfather clock and mirrors and vanity and all that kind of thing. And Delirium, or the Freak rather, leads Spawn on the way to Delirium, all the while speaking in that flowery language and whatnot. And once they break into Delirium's stronghold, it's not long before some of those supposedly mindless guards show up. Spawn's fully engaged, fully believes everything this guy says, helps him take out these guards, and it's not too long before they are standing outside the door of Delirium's bedroom and break in. And Delirium, he sure doesn't look like what we saw in that flashback. once the freak is upon him, he looks just like a regular old doctor. And again, you wonder at what point is Spawn going to realize that, hey, maybe everything isn't quite as it seems. And even Delirium, as he's talking, he doesn't sound crazy. He doesn't sound the way that that the freak portrayed him. But maybe because Spawn is distracted by the guards that come into the room as the freak is attacking Dr. Delirium, quote unquote, Spawn doesn't really notice. And what eventually ends up happening is the freak gets his revenge by dropping Delirium outside the window, and he crashes into the roof of a police car and has his revenge. So he meets a pretty bad end, and with all these guards and police and whatnot that are coming up to the penthouse where Delirium was, and Spawn helps the freak fight his way out, and they return to the sewers. So on the next page, we do see that we're at the Federal Health Services Department, and we're told a little more of reality of what's actually taking place, the truth about the freak, who was Mr. Capullo. And somebody's talking to his wife, and they're saying, or his ex-wife, I should say, and they're saying, your husband's escaped from the institution again. All the efforts to find him and help him have been unsuccessful, and they want her help in finding him. And he's like, this is not, she says, it's not what I thought my life would be. When I left him 8 years ago, he just lost it. When I told him that I didn't want to have kids, and he freaked out, and so I had to leave him, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And he's running off he just lost it. He ran off the reality. And one thing I neglected to mention is throughout the story, the other thing that Moore does is there are these little square boxes that you see throughout the story, usually in the bottom right corner. And whenever you see those square boxes, what the dialogue that's in those boxes, it's very expositional, and it's just the most mundane, everyday things. But what you realize is they are sort of the life that this Mr. Capullo, who turns into the freak, really wants. Like he says, eat dinner, watch TV, maybe go out for a beer, put away money for the kids' college. Maybe next year we get a new car. It's the life that he wanted with his wife, and then having that pulled out from under him, having that taken away, and maybe the stress of the job. Maybe he really was an undercover government agent. I think that's what caused this break, right? And so he can't let go of that, and that's what his wife is telling this official at the federal health department, that I couldn't take it. I'm not going to help you. It's not that I don't want to, but he really screwed up my life, and I don't care about him. I need to live my own life, and I'm not going to get dragged back into his freaky dream world, right? And that's the fact that she calls it a freaky dream world is a little bit of a telltale sign, of the moniker that he's given himself. So she does say, hey, why don't you call this doctor? Maybe he could be of some help. And this is where it really comes home, because the official there says, we have called his doctor, but no one seems to be answering at Dr. DeLorean's office. We'll try again in the morning. So that was actually Capullo's doctor, but his name wasn't Dr. Delirium. His name was Dr. DeLorean, and he was actually the psychiatrist that was trying to help this guy. But it seems like the freak, he doesn't want to live in reality. He wants to live in this flowery dream reality that he's created, where he can play the victim and not take responsibility for the reason that his life went sideways. I mean, okay, be angry with your wife and split up with her if she doesn't want to have kids and that's what you want. Like, first of all, I wonder, that's something you talk about before you marry somebody, dude. So unless she tricked you, you should have married somebody that wanted to have the life you wanted. But that's really neither here nor there. So what it does bring home, though, is the fact that Al Simmons got tricked. He didn't do his due diligence, and he's now helped an innocent man be killed. So obviously that is not ideal. So on the last page, we do see Spawn talking, and he's like, "Hey, you got your revenge. I'm glad you feel better." And the Freak's like, "Yes, thank you. I'm glad that you helped me." And Spawn says, "Okay, well, you did what you had to do, and I'm fighting, a few inner demons myself, and you've reminded me to stay focused." And the Freak's like, "Focused? Yeah, I've already got what I think is my next target." And we see him take out the gun that he stole from Dr. DeLorean, who pulled it out of his side table when the Freak attacked him, and pulls it out and is pointed at Spawn. So maybe the Freak has already chosen Spawn as his next victim. I guess we'll have to see, because Spawn says, "Okay, good luck." He doesn't notice the gun because he's walking away. He says, "Good luck. Hope you succeed." And the Freak says, "I will," and starts laughing. So it's not a huge story in terms of moving the narrative forward. I mean, really, it is the Freak. I mean, that's the name of the issue. It's really what the story is focused on, this new character. We get a lot of detail about the Freak. I'm sure he'll show back up. Seems that Spawn is his target. Will he pull the trigger right then? Will the next issue start with Spawn and the Freak fighting? I guess it remains to be seen. What does it mean that the actions of the Freak says that Spawn says the actions of the Freak have helped him stay focused, or I have these demons of my own, and you've helped me, realize that I need to stay focused. You reminded me I need to stay focused. But does that mean he's going to go back after Jason Wynn? Does it mean he's going to go after Malbolgia? Does it mean he's going to fight the forces of heaven? Like, what exactly is the fallout? What exactly are the consequences of this story? Because in this issue itself, we don't get any other narrative. We don't see Terry Fitzgerald show up. We don't see Wanda Blake show up. We don't see Wynn. We don't see Sam and Twitch. We see nobody. This issue is all Freak and Spawn, and then the Federal Health Agency official and the Freak's ex-wife. That's it. That's all we see. So there's no other storylines that get any forward momentum. I won't say it didn't bother me at all, but I'd be nitpicking because I think it is a complete story. But it is a departure, because for the last few issues, we've always at least gotten a page. We've always at least checked in. Hey, what are Sam and Twitch up to? What's Grandma Blake up to? What's Terry Fitzgerald up to? And it keeps the momentum for those storylines going. So again, don't begrudge it. Obviously, with Alan Moore writing, he's not familiar with those storylines. I'm sure McFarlane went to him and said, "Hey, I got this character, Freak. Here's my plans for him. You want to write the issue?" And that's where Moore's going to focus. So again, it's not a big deal, especially being just one issue. Unless Moore's writing the next one too, then I would think. Based on the story structure of Spawn up to this point, I think it would be doing a disservice to the readers if you go more than an issue, more than a single issue without checking in on those other storylines, because they have been moving along. We've seen the Violator for the last 3 or 4 issues. We've seen Jason Wynn. So you don't want to go too long. Now, when I'm reading them, day after day after day, if the comic doesn't touch on those storylines for 2 or 3 days, that's no big deal for me, because I can remember something I read 2 or 3 days ago. But you got to remember, these are coming out monthly, so I'm reading them with that in the back of my mind. And if you're going 3 months without touching on a storyline, you're asking a lot for people to remember it without having to go back and reread it. So that being said, I think it is a fun story. I will say that the artwork felt a little different to me. Even though it's Capullo, let me share my screen again. Even though it's Capullo, I felt like for the first time in a while, or maybe ever, the anatomy is very exaggerated. And I suppose it's supposed to be like that for the Freak, because he is very, thin but giant hair and whatnot. But it's it's more like Capullo style anatomy for these characters than we've seen from Capullo before. Like, so often I've talked about the fact that Capullo, especially when he first came on Spawn, he, his anatomy, his figure work was more realistic. His whole style really was a little more realistic. So maybe it's the influence of McFarlane's art on Capullo, or maybe Todd specifically had in the plot, or asked Alan Moore to script it in a certain way, saying, "Hey, I need this book. I need this particular issue to look, a certain way with more exaggeration in anatomy or whatnot." We also know that that Alan Moore writes very, very detailed scripts. So is that the case here because McFarlane helped him plot it? Did he still write extremely detailed scripts? I mean, when I say detailed scripts, I mean we've seen some of them, and it'll be like, page 1, panel 1, in the background there's a chair. On the chair there's a red jacket. The red jacket has, white stripes on the shoulders, and it has zippered pockets on the side, and in the left pocket is sticking out as a pack of cigarettes. The pack of cigarettes is called, cancer sticks, and it's, red and blue, and it has yellow stars on. I mean, getting down to the minutia, right? So I'd be interested to know if that was. So, I mean, I don't think you tell Alan Moore how to write. I mean, he's Alan Moore, so I would assume that it was a pretty detailed script, but would love to know exactly the details on that. So anyway, interesting issue. Can't say I'm a big fan of the Freak. Can't say I'm a big fan of Al Simmons trusting the Freak from the start. And when I say I'm not a fan of the Freak, I mean, again, he's somewhat of a two-dimensional character, which, like I mentioned before, isn't exactly out of the ordinary for a Spawn villain or Spawn character. I mean, without question, the most nuanced character in Spawn is Al Simmons himself. So I guess he's a title character, and that should be what it is. But sure, we haven't seen the last of the Freak, as I said, and we'll see how it plays out. So it was an enjoyable issue, and that lack of exposition does continue. But again, McFarlane didn't script it, so you expect that. But like, I've given him credit for the past few issues that he really seems to have left that real heavy expositional style behind him. But that's not to say it can't return. And I also mentioned that inside the front cover is another recap paragraph, which we've seen for the last few issues, which does help McFarlane not have to do that. So anyway, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Don't forget, if you're listening to us on the audio only, be sure you head over to YouTube, to Rocky's channel. It's Comic Boom, comic space boom, ! Subscribe. Watch these episodes there if you want to check out the art. If you do check us out on YouTube and you're not subscribed to the Comic Source, be sure you do so you don't miss any of our other audio-only content that comes out, like the new Comics Wednesdays that I mentioned, like all the fantastic interviews that we do. So just go to your favorite podcasting application on your smart device, or your favorite podcasting platform, Google, Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, whatever it is, and just search for the Comic Source and subscribe. So we really appreciate the support as always, and we'll talk to you next time.